Mother's Day is the one day of the year that children around the world shower their mothers with love and affection. For two mothers in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, it was the beginning of a waking nightmare. One mother would wake up to realize her youngest child was nowhere to be found, while another mother would go to bed realizing the horrible and mind-bending things her child was capable of. Life at 231 Cloisterbane Drive in Jacksonville couldn't be better. The Bailey 7, as they like to be called, were especially excited for the weekend. Saturday was Mother's Day, and on Sunday they had their weekly Bailey Sunday Fundays planned out. That evening, the family went out for dinner and later stopped by to visit one of the older children. They got back home shortly before 12 and everyone headed off to bed, all except 13-year-old Tristyn, the last of the 5 children. Around midnight, her older sister, Sophia, saw Tristyn in the garage on a video call with a guy wearing a baseball cap backward. Sophia left her to it and went off to bed. The following morning was Mother's Day, and the Bailey's kitchen was filled with the smell of cooking as they made breakfast for their mom, all except Tristyn. Finally, shortly before 10, her brother Tegan ran up to get her, but there was no sign of Tristyn. Within minutes, the whole house was awake, searching for the missing teen. They tried her phone number, but it went straight to voicemail. And more alarming, her cell phone and Snapchat locations were turned off, as was the Life 360 app the family used to keep track of one another. None of her friends knew where she was either. At the stroke of 10 a.m., Tristyn's mom, Stacy, made a call to the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office and reported her youngest child missing. All thoughts of the Mother's Day breakfast were gone, as she wondered who would have had any cause to harm her daughter. Tristyn Bailey was born on January 18, 2009, to a middle-class family in St. Johns County, Florida. She attended Patriot Oaks Academy and was doing well in school, but her after-school hours went to cheerleading. Tristyn was a member of many cheerleading teams and participated in many competitions, including the UCA Championship, which her team won. She was lively, inspiring, and kind. Her friends could always count on her to stand up for them against bullies, or even just after a rough day. Tristyn befriended people from all walks of life and captured the hearts of just about everyone who knew her. But now she was gone, and her family couldn't figure out why. Missing teenagers are one of the hardest cases to get authorities on board. Teenagers run off all the time and reappear days later. The 911 dispatcher knew this and guided Stacy through a series of questions. Was Tristyn acting differently? Did she have a new group of friends? Did she have a boyfriend? Did she sneak out of the house regularly? Was she on medication? Stacy answered the questions as best she could. Yes, her daughter had been a bit standoffish lately, but what teen wasn't? No, Tristyn didn't have any new friends or a boyfriend, and she never snuck out of the house. She was also not on any medication. The police looked through surveillance videos from one of the neighbors and were able to ascertain that Tristyn had snuck out of the house at midnight, most likely headed to a friend's place. While detectives combed through the suburban neighborhood, others looked closer to home and started questioning a couple of her friends, namely Dolphus Absher III, also known as Trey, Aiden Fucci, and Samantha, and Lena Creel. Trey said Tristyn had come to his house at 12:30 a.m., but had left half an hour later. A neighbor's surveillance camera cleared him as a suspect. Then they got a lead from another one of her friends, Aiden. He told the detectives about a shadowy figure, a drug dealer who went by the name Carlo, with a last name that was either Bonatti or Lindo, that Tristyn chatted with over Snapchat. It was possible that she got some and went to the amenities center where teens his age frequented to use drugs. Lena and Trey corroborated the story. Carlo was a 22-year-old who drove a Ford pickup truck and lived at 12508 Muscovy Drive in Jacksonville, Florida. Detectives soon had a picture to match the name. They rushed to the residence, but no one there knew anyone called Carlo Bonatti or Carol Lindo. It was back to square one. But not long after, another address came through the pipeline, 1319 Fruit Cove Road. Officers didn't find Carlo, but they met his brother Marco. Marco agreed that he and his brother's last name was Lindo, but his brother was not in the house and hadn't been for several days. The detectives were not easily convinced and asked him to place a call to Carlo. Carlo supported his brother's claim. He had been staying with his father since his truck broke down. The last time he had driven into St. Johns County was on May 1st, another dead end. The search for the teen continued. Helicopters took to the air, but there was no sign for her. They put out a missing child alert for Tristyn and took to the airwaves asking for help in locating a 13-year-old blonde girl wearing a black and gray t-shirt with the word pink across the front, with black Nike shorts and a pair of checkered Vans. Daniel Hart was one of those hoping for the safe return of the teenager. He lived in the neighborhood and had a front seat view of the sheriff's deputies going door to door and the helicopters flying overhead. It was all one could think about, so he and his wife found themselves discussing where Tristyn could be. His wife suggested he check in the woods along the end of the cul-de-sac and the pond on the property next to theirs. So, when Daniel completed his 5:30 p.m. run, he went there and had a look around with no success. 30 minutes in, he had only walked a few steps past a wired fence when he spotted a female body in a wooded area. She had on a black shirt, black Nike shorts, and her hair was muddy and messed up. She was sure it was Tristyn, even before he made the 911 call. At 6:15 p.m., deputies arrived on the scene and positively identified the deceased victim as 13-year-old Tristyn Bailey. Her blonde hair was matted and red with blood, and there were holes all over her shirt. An autopsy would reveal Tristyn had been stabbed 114 times. 49 of the stab wounds to her hands, arms, and head were made while she was alive and struggling against her attacker. Close to her body, they found her cell phone, a gold-toned ring, a $20 bill, and a pink vape. Crime scene investigators were able to get a shoe impression, and a diver located a buck knife in the nearby pond. The tip of the knife was broken off. Later on, it would be found inside Tristyn's scalp. Detectives wondered who could be so angry at Tristyn to murder her so brutally, but no one came to mind. However, one person had stood out to them as they interviewed her friends, the very one who had sent them on a wild goose chase looking for a drug dealer, Aiden Fucci. Aiden was the last person Trey had seen with Tristyn that night. His timeline about what he did that night wasn't adding up. And worst of all, his behavior was straight up weird. While deputies were taking him in for further questioning, the 14-year-old had taken a video showing his friends Trey and a selfie of himself seated in the back seat of the patrol car holding up a peace sign. He posted the picture on Snapchat with a text that read, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristyn lately?" But what stood out to detectives was one of the replies. "You were with her, Aiden. You know what happened to her." Like Tristyn, Aiden Fucci was a student at Patriot Oaks Academy. It was a school that he only got to attend because his parents put in a friend's home address to get him into that district. At the school, the 14-year-old had a reputation as a bully, got involved in fights, and made graphic drawings of mutilated bodies and strange-looking figures holding knives. Even his girlfriend didn't have good things to say about him. Aiden, she said, often carried a knife with him and talked about killing people, including herself. She had lost count of the number of times he would sneak up on her and pretend to slit her throat or stab her. But the most shocking was still to come. A month before Tristyn's murder, Aiden told her he was planning to find someone walking at night, drag them off into the woods and stab them, but she never took it seriously. Until now. When detectives had first arrived at Aiden's home on Castledale Court, he told them that when he and Tristyn had left Trey's house, they had walked together to a parkway and then gone their separate ways. He had gotten home at 3 a.m. Aiden couldn't explain why it would take him 2.5 hours to make the 28-minute stroll from Trey to his home. At first, Aiden said he was looking at the stars, but as they questioned him more, his story changed. This time, he said when he and Tristyn got to the parkway, they didn't go their separate ways. They kissed and Tristyn had tried to grab his penis. He lost his temper and pushed her, causing her to fall and hit her head on the ground. Aiden wasn't sure if he saw Tristyn get up or not, as she was woozy from smoking marijuana at Trey's, but he left her there and spent the next 2 hours roaming the streets to cool his temper before heading home. The detectives asked if he knew where Tristyn could have gone next, and he told them about Carlo, the drug dealer. Suspecting the 14-year-old knew a little too much, the detectives read him his rights and took him in for questioning, along with Trey, while they searched for the elusive Carlo. As deputies patted him down, they found a blue-handled folding knife, which they turned over to Aiden's father, Jason Fucci. At the time, it looked like a child just playing around with his dad's things, but knowing what had killed Tristyn, the presence of the knife was much more sinister. They tried to get the knife back and test it, but Aiden's father had lost it. That night, Aiden, along with his father and his mother, Crystal Smith, were placed in an audio and video recorded interview room at the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. As they sat alone in the room, Crystal and Jason kept telling Aiden not to speak about any involvement he might have in Tristyn's death. They also told him that the room was recorded and he shouldn't speak till his lawyer got there. Yet they couldn't help themselves and asked Aiden what had gone on that night. The 14-year-old repeated the second story he had given detectives. When he was done, Crystal asked him what he had worn that night. When Aiden said jeans, she persuaded Aiden to say he had been wearing khakis that night if anyone asked. She also didn't allow officers to take DNA samples from Aiden and insisted on waiting for their lawyer. But when the lawyer came, the parents would be left in tears when they realized the officers had a lot more on Aiden and he would not be going home. Aiden's father, Jason, stopped talking and instead started writing texts into his phone, passing it back and forth between him and his son so the police wouldn't hear what they were saying over the cameras. But all their attempts at protecting Aiden were a little too late. Police had executed a search warrant on Aiden's home and found the sheath of a buck knife that was an exact match to the knife found close to Tristyn's body. They also found 8 pocket knives, wet sneakers with blood on them, a t-shirt with blood, and a pair of damp blue jeans. The drain of a bathroom sink close to his room came back positive for the presence of blood. On Aiden's hands and shoulders, they found scratches and cuts that he could not escape. Less than 24 hours after Tristyn was reported missing, Aiden Fucci was charged with second-degree murder. But the arrests in the Fucci home were not over yet. Police found a CCTV camera in the home and soon found out one of Aiden's parents had known he had done something sinister. Once police first started questioning Tristyn's friends and got Aiden's parents' permission to take him in for questioning, his mother went straight to his room and soon found a pair of bloody jeans. Crystal took them to the bathroom where she scrubbed out the blood as best she could. She even had a neighbor check if the jeans looked clean enough before returning them to his room. Crystal was charged with tampering with evidence in her son's murder and booked into the St. Johns County Sheriff's Detention Center. Thanks to call records and multiple surveillance videos in the neighborhood, detectives were able to piece together what had happened that night. Trey had been suspended from school and was grounded. At 8 p.m. on the night of May 8, 2021, his friend Aiden showed up to hang out and the two skateboarded on the driveway before going in to play video games. 30 minutes to midnight, after smoking some marijuana, Trey called many of his friends, asking them to sneak out and come hang out at his house. One of these friends was Tristyn. Tristyn was just coming in with her family and wasn't so sure she would come. Minutes later, she got another call, this time from Aiden. He had gotten her number from Trey and pleaded for her to come over. The two had only chatted on Snapchat and in school. Tristyn said yes, and 5 minutes later, she was maneuvering her way around the CCTV cameras and into the house. For half an hour, Tristyn hung out with the boys. At 1 a.m., Aiden and Tristyn said their goodbyes and left together. Instead of heading home, a camera picked up the two walking through the neighborhood. Another camera picked them up on their way to where Tristyn's body would later be found. Aiden had on shorts, a light-colored hooded sweatshirt, and white shoes with a black Nike logo, and Tristyn was wearing black pants and a black shirt. It would be the last time she would be seen alive. The next time the camera picked anyone up, it would be just one lone figure walking away from the area, carrying the white shoes in their hand. It was Aiden Fucci, returning home early that morning after viciously stabbing Tristyn to death. His mother heard him get back home shortly after 3 a.m. Aiden was held without bond at the state-run juvenile detention facility in Volusia County, while the prosecution decided if he would be tried as an adult. Hundreds of thousands of people signed an online petition calling for Aiden to be tried as an adult for the first-degree murder. If that didn't happen, Aiden would leave juvenile once he clocked 18. Days later, a grand jury indicted him on a first-degree murder charge, and Aiden would be tried as an adult. On February 23, 2023, Aiden, now 16 years old, pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. At the sentence hearing, he read a 17-page statement to the court, apologizing and claiming he had mental health issues. His mother was noticeably absent. Instead, she sent a letter pleading for a shorter sentence for her son. After $36,000 in therapy sessions and months of grieving, the Bailey family came face-to-face with the person who murdered Tristyn and made emotional statements about their lives since the murder. His sister Alexis dropped 114 teal-colored stones into a glass jar to represent each time Aiden stabbed her younger sister. Tristyn's mother, still haunted by her daughter's final moments, pleaded with the judge for no leniency and tears.
He is beyond saving.
Even though Aiden was tried as an adult, he escaped the death penalty because he was still a minor. The judge was struck, not only by the lack of motive in the crime, but that Tristyn and Aiden had been friends. Yet, he killed her because he wanted to kill someone. Anyone. Aiden Fucci was sentenced to 40 years to life. In 25 years, his sentence would be reconsidered, but so far, his behavior at the juvenile home is proving he'll be behind bars for a long time. Aiden had been involved in fights, was caught with contraband, threatened other inmates, and was combative with guards. On more than one occasion, he had to be pepper sprayed and restrained. He even told another inmate that he was real because he stabbed Tristyn face to face. Aiden is currently being held at the juvenile section of Suwannee Correctional, a maximum security prison that once held one of the youngest serial killers at a time, Craig Price. Once Aiden turns 18, he will join the maximum security prison population. As for his mother, because the Bailey family didn't want to have to deal with another trial, hearing what Tristyn had been through, they agreed to a plea deal, and Crystal pleaded no contest to tampering with evidence. She walked away with just 30 days in jail and 5 years on probation. Mother's Day is changed forever for the Bailey family, but they are helping Tristyn's life live on by sponsoring a youth mental health program, a community-focused gym that will offer self-defense classes, as well as a scholarship program.